Welcome back to Rewitched, a charmed 1998 rewatch journey. I'm your host, Jess Sabanko, and I can't wait to share my thoughts on one of my favorite shows with you. I'll be keeping these recaps spoiler-free and welcome fans, new and old, to join me on my journey here and on social media at Rewitched_pod on Instagram and TikTok. Currently, I'm on season 7. All right, so this week we're talking about season 7, episode 3, Cheaper by the Coven. So our innocents and villains of the week, our main innocent this week is Wyatt, and then also a little bit the sisters. And our antagonist is also kind of Wyatt, at least his own subconscious. And it's summoning this Leo demon thing that I'll get into as I go into the episode. As far as the sisters' kind of like side storylines go, so Paige obviously is continuing her work at magic school. We see that progress reports and all these things are kind of overwhelming her. She's like, we haven't even been open in long enough for like progress to have been made. And also we're introduced to this character, Ben, who at first I thought was a teacher because it seems like he's teaching the class, but then later Paige says that he's a student, but he's 21. So like, I'm very unsure about this Ben character and like what he is, who he is. In terms of Phoebe and what's going on with her. So we find out that Ask Phoebe has won a Reader's Choice Award for the first time, and she is very excited about this, but then she finds out that Leslie is actually the one who won the award because she goes to confront him for accepting the award, and he's like, well, you know, it was from a column I wrote, but I was gonna accept it on your behalf, all this stuff. And when she comes to confront him, he is on the phone with two different women. One, he says, is for research, the other is a personal call, and you could see like a little bit of jealousy come out in Phoebe where she's like, oh, like, why don't you just take one of your pals from the phone with you to the event, when he's like, oh, you could come with me, like, you can accept the award, whatever. And she does show up to the award ceremony after the spell that Grams cast that turns the sisters into teens, but in my opinion, they're acting more like 9 or 10-year-olds, but whatever. So Phoebe does show up, and like last time when she was turned into a kid by a spell, her love interest does assume that she's drunk, and she did have one drink, but she pretends that it was 3 martinis. If 3 martinis makes you act like that, Phoebe, you should never have another drink again. But anyway, she does go up to accept the award. She's like, this is so awesome. And then someone asks her a question about the advice, and she's like, doesn't really know how to answer it. Leslie does kind of step in, give this whole story, pretending that Phoebe had given him some advice about a breakup. And it's this really sweet moment where then like, she's like, oh, thank you, and like jumps into his arms and hugs him, and then like gets really embarrassed and runs away. But then later on, she does call him 28 times, which then Piper and Paige are very much calling her out for liking Leslie. And they do have a conversation at the end of the episode where he's like, come on, just like admit that you weren't just grateful. That wasn't the only reason for the hug. Like, you like me. And she's like, what would make you say that? He's like, oh, like maybe all the phone calls. I have caller ID. And she's like, oh, like my redial was broken, whatever. But then like they do go in that little like funny bickery way they go until she does get more serious and is like, no, but seriously, like, thank you. And when she goes to leave, we see that Leslie obviously likes her too, because he's like, if she likes me, she'll turn around. And just as she's about to go out the main door of the office, she does. And it is like this cute moment. The way he says it almost sounds like a spell though, which I thought was interesting and definitely kept note of. But I am definitely curious to see where things are going to go with these two. I do like this kind of like antagonistic, but like obviously like sexual tension that they're building up to there. So I am definitely curious to see how that storyline will continue to develop throughout the season. In terms of Piper, so she's again going through one of those phases where she wants to like limit the magic in her life. She's talking to one of the bartenders at P3 who's like surprised she's not more upset and kind of like blowing up about the beer order getting delayed. And she's like, you know, some people like put their life into a higher power. Like, I'm trying to get rid of any power, reduce stress in my life. Though obviously when attack happens to Wyatt, she's very quick to jump back in and be like, we have to figure this out. Though she doesn't want a wiccaning for Chris, she wants her son's life to be a little bit less magic. She brings up how didn't even protect Wyatt. Though Paige is the first to call out, like, we waited 6 months and like he almost turned evil. And she is bringing in all these family members to try to convince Piper, first Grams and then later Victor. And obviously Piper is still very much dealing with what's going on with Leo, very quick to defend him when people are like, oh, like Leo's been missing. And she's like, you guys don't get it. Like, he's fine. Don't worry about it. And I am really enjoying the dynamic between the two of them, though it does make me worried as Leo continues to go down a dark path that Piper is too quick to defend him, which obviously could be problematic in the magical world, which is something Grams kind of points out, because Victor's like, Leo would never hurt Wyatt, and Grams is quick to be like, listen, you might understand him as a father, but like you don't understand the magical world, what could be going on here, how he's being affected by all of this. And Piper obviously is very much on that same side as her dad, where she knows that Leo couldn't do anything to hurt Wyatt. Though obviously we do find out that it's Wyatt doing it, and I am really interested in talking more about him in a few minutes. In terms of whether or not I think this will continue, we do get that really nice family moment at the end, so perhaps Leo is going to get back on a good path, but I'm not too sure because in terms of his individual storyline in this episode, he is again still spending a lot of time in the underworld hunting for demons, which Grams calls him out for. She's like, can you even tell the difference between good and evil? Like, I know what's going on. Why are you down there? Obviously very much on the side of being antagonistic towards Leo, not trusting him in this episode, especially once she sees the reveal that the masked demon is Leo. We see that Leo sees this demonic woman played by the lovely Charisma Carpenter, who I think is some type of seer or oracle. She has this pool that she looks into and kind of tells Leo that he's who he's looking for, which Leo flips out, like attacks her. I don't like this violence against women that we're seeing from Leo in this episode. Very disturbing, though she is a demon. And she calls him out for that when he comes back asking for more advice and is like, well, I don't know, because whether I give you the answer or like I don't, I feel like you're gonna choke me to death. So like, why would I help you? But then ultimately does go into the pool and obviously is helping him to see something, which does lead to him discovering the truth about what's going on with Wyatt, which is obviously helpful. I definitely am curious to see if we'll see more of her back as Leo continues to question some of the things going on, obviously thinking back to that floating head that we've seen multiple times throughout this season. In terms of Wyatt, so we do see that obviously he's jealous of Chris getting all the attention and also very bothered by what's happened between his parents, the conflict that's coming up, and the way that he feels responsible for their breakup. We see that Patty tells Piper that when her and Victor split up, Piper was having these night terrors and blaming herself for their divorce, which it seems like Wyatt is now doing the same thing, but because he's so powerful, his dreams and his night terrors are manifesting themselves into this demon that's ultimately going to hurt him. And Piper gets it. She's actually very sympathetic, and then her and Leo, of course, are going to go to rescue Wyatt. And it is this really amazing family moment where we see Wyatt there and the fake Leo says to him, you know, like, this is gonna do it, like this is gonna get your parents back together. And then we see these creepy demons approaching him, and from behind him, Piper and Leo have appeared and start vanquishing them all and then tell him that, you know, it's not his fault and he doesn't have to get hurt in order to make things work between them. And there is this moment where then they get him, you know, to understand and they pick him up. And it's really a really beautiful family moment where Leo is blaming himself and Piper's like, no, like, we'll figure this out together. Like, you'll figure out your path back to where you're supposed to be. Like, I believe in you. I know you. And obviously, it seems effective. It seems like they do have this really nice family moment. We see that at the wiccaning, which does end up happening at the end of the episode. Grams even gives her version of an apology to Leo. And it is really nice to see them all coming together for this moment. The other thing I really want to talk about in terms of this episode is the Patty and Victor of it all. So we see that obviously at first it's Grams and Victor, their tension, their bickering kind of complements the way that we're seeing the rivalry between Chris and Wyatt, as well as between the sisters once Grams' spell does transfer it into them. And there is that kind of like tension there that he then is like, you know what, we're never going to agree about what to do here, because Grams thinks they shouldn't reverse the spell once she finds out that Leo's the one going after Wyatt, because she thinks it'll break Piper. Victor disagrees with this, and so they summon Patty to kind of break the tie. She ends up agreeing with Victor. There is this kind of thing throughout the episode where Grams is bringing up that she raised them as witches, and there is one quote I want to read from where she was talking to Piper about the talk they'd had, and Piper's like, I don't want to talk about sex with you. I know about it. That's gross. And then she's like, no, I mean the witch talk. And she brings up that she told the sisters how much being a witch meant to her and what it had brought into her life. And Piper says, did you tell us that Prue and Mom were going to die, or that Leo was going to lose his marbles, or that demons were going to be chasing after us all the time everywhere? Graham says, Piper, I didn't know any of those things were going to happen. But if I did, I would have done everything in my power to stop it. I like to think that being a witch gave you the inner strength you needed to deal with all those sadnesses in your life. And it is a really nice moment, because I agree. I think that so much of the strength and personality they've developed throughout their lives in their experience as witches has prepared them to deal with a lot of the hardships they've faced. Being witches, all the experiences the sisters have had with the loss they've suffered throughout their lives has kind of culminated in this great goodness in them that obviously is so tied to their destiny. And I like the way that Grams kind of brings this up, and the way she gives this hope to Piper in this moment, and the way that she brings up to Victor throughout the episode, yeah, there are some things that you get a say in, but when it comes to their magic, that was all me. And then really calling out Patty and Victor when they make the decision to kind of reverse the magic, where she's like, I'm the one who did everything, you guys weren't there. Which obviously in Patty's case wasn't her fault. And also, somewhat in Victor's, because he does again bring up that Grams wouldn't allow him to be around in their lives. So there is kind of some rewrites of history there where they even bring up what if we had been together to raise the girls? And it's but what about Paige? She obviously was the product of an affair, so would Paige not be there? Would it have just been the other three girls? There is some things that make me feel sorry for her in that way, but there is obviously that love within the family unit that we do see throughout this episode. And in the wiccaning at the end, we do see that Patty and Victor are holding hands as this is all happening. And there is a cute moment of connection between them in the attic that is then interrupted when the sisters come up and they're like, all right, the kids are here, cut it out, whatever's going on. And so I do wonder if there is still very much that love between them. And of course, in terms of our overall storyline with the sisters getting infected with this, I do like the way that it's played out and the way that Patty's then able to do this really quick reversal spell, whereas Grams was sitting there trying to write one forever, and Patty's like, oh, I came up with this when I was 9, showing us kind of that powerfulness of her growing up with magic, which I really enjoyed in terms of family history. And then seeing the way that Grams is, again, protective of the sisters, but ultimately wants to keep this family unit, wants to avoid tension, just is a little moody and stubborn, just like the sisters and everyone else in this family is. The way she's kind of oh, well, if you guys are going to do your own thing, then I'm just going to leave. Guess you don't need me. Bye. I love it. I love the family-ness of it, and I love the way that they kind of portray the way these traits are shared throughout the sisters and those who raised them. In terms of magic school and everything going on there, with Paige, the one thing I do want to bring up is when she is under the influence, she does go and kisses that Ben guy who's working there. And then she's like, wait, how old are you? And he's 21. And she's like, oh God, this was a mistake. But how old is Paige? Isn't she 27? Definitely a little old for, a 21-year-old, but not ridiculously so. But then I love that Graham shows up and admonishes him and is robbing the cradle. You should be ashamed of yourself. It is this really comedic moment. And I do wonder if that's going to come back to haunt her later, because she's I tongued a student. And it's is he a student or a teacher? I'm very confused about his place. But I do wonder if there will be any impact there, because oftentimes when the sisters get put under these spells, they don't face major consequences. So I am wondering what will happen with all of that. And I am definitely interested to see the way things continue to develop with the storylines we're introduced to in this episode, in terms of more of the Phoebe and Leslie stuff, more going on with Piper and Leo, and then Paige and her magic school storyline. I definitely love a family-centered episode. I always have, so definite highlight of this episode for me. I do hope that it solved some things in terms of how Wyatt feels about his responsibility for Leo killing Gideon and then kind of going down this darker path. So I did really like that element and the way that we see that once again, Wyatt is way smarter than his age and is developing so strongly magically, and what that kind of means for the sisters in this parental role with him as well as Leo. But yeah, overall, definitely an enjoyable episode, and season 7 is off to a good start. But that's all I have for this one, and I hope you'll join me back next time.